Hi, my name is Andrew Amann, and I've beat the often path by trying to build a venture studio through bootstrapping and building products repetitively after each other instead of trying to raise capital.
Welcome back to the Beat the Often Path podcast. I'm your host, Ross Palmer. Joining us today is the CEO of 923 Venture Studio, an award-winning software design and engineering firm. His company helps launch startups and products, developing apps, IoT devices, that's Internet of Things, and software. Well, they've built several clients' products and helped them get to over $1 billion in valuation, and they've been featured in the Inc. 5000 2 years in a row. I'm a digital agency owner myself, and for me, Andrew represents someone a few steps further ahead in the process, so I'm very excited about the wisdom contained in this show. In this episode, we're going to talk shop about how you can go from being a freelancer to a business owner and how you can scale a business while still taking care of your family and having free time for yourself. This man has some great insights into practically building a multi-million-dollar business while building other businesses. So if you've ever had the entrepreneurial itch or you just aren't quite sure what the next step should be, this one is for you. All right, welcome to the show, Andrew. It's a pleasure to have you here. What made you realize that I could build this business? I just need somebody else to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think it was more the inspiration of building a business that didn't have a boss. I think that was the original goal. Is I wanted to be home. I didn't want to work in an office. And I kind of desperately wanted to show the world that I was capable of reinventing something that was new. And so the business card opportunity was the first, parlay into kind of investigating if it's possible. And luckily I found a co-founder that was willing to go along with the ride with me. But for the most part, my inspiration really came from working for myself, being home while my kids are growing up. We've been remote since 2016. It was an opportunity for us to really pave our own way. And I think that was the motivation in building the first company. But after we built and sold that one, we realized we got a pretty good team and we really like what we do. Let's keep doing that instead of trying to build new ideas for companies and startups.
So you went the route of trying to help other people do this instead of building your own thing. So like an agency route. I mean, that's basically what I do. I have a marketing agency. I help other clients, but that's always a question that I have. It's always a debate that I have, if you will, whether it's better to do your own thing because you have all of these skills. Like you said, you can build anything or you can build something out. I often wonder whether it would be better for me to just build a product instead of trying to help all of my clients build products. So what do you think about the difference between those two models, and why did you end up settling on the one that you did?
Yeah, and it leads us to the third model, which is the Beat the Often Path model that we suggested at the beginning of the episode here. But the agency path, being an apprentice, I think is undersought opportunity that most entrepreneurs don't go after. And I really honestly think my advice to any 20, 22-year-old that's coming out of college is be an apprentice first for an industry that you want to move into. You have zero downside, right? You can become an entrepreneur like I did and come up with ideas for that company. And if the idea doesn't work, you still get a W-2 check at the end of the day. You're not dropped off in the corner of the street. You're not having dinners and like ramen noodle dinners and pasta dinners while your friends are out like at restaurants. There's a prime opportunity in your life to like really learn from an industry. And the stark difference is that I realized that, that becoming a client in an agency for somebody else gave us the profits and the opportunity to experiment in building a product. And so we built 14 of them with the profits from our agency. And we thought, oh, that's a great model. We should double down on that. What we didn't realize is that you really need about 27 to 30 products to get one successful one. And when you're bootstrapping that, it's a very long road to see profits from startups, from products, and you're not going to get it right on the first one. And we've been doing an investigation to all the famous people we know of today, Nathan Barry from ConvertKit, or any of these individuals that we deem successful now. They failed 9-10 times before that product hit the shelves and was successful. And so we could either continue down that path and keep waiting till the one that hits, or we can just be an agency. And then the third model we found was this venture studio model, which is new and different than what a lot of people understand as an agency, but it is providing us both with the profits and the ability to be an apprentice for other people.
So describe to me how that works then. What is the actual system there? Yeah.
Sure. So the agency model is obviously building for other people, and you are an order taker. Somebody is coming to you and saying, this is the type of product that I want. These are the colors that I want. Can you go do this? And you give them a price and you perform that. Venture studios or startup studios primarily have this reputation of providing capital to startups. And the famous one that I know about, I mean, Idea Lab is famous, but they also have a convoluted model because they've been around for so long. But Atomic VC is a model that's come up in the last 10 years. He has a spreadsheet of about 600 ideas, and they've built 27 of them. Of those 27 products, there are about 5 or 6 that have gone public that they would consider exits. But that is a company that has raised $410 million to perform those 27 products.
Dang.
And I don't have the network or the resources to do that. And that's what we think of when we think of Startup Studio is massive amount of capital, build a bunch of really cool startups and go public.
And hope that one of them succeeds. Yeah.
Exactly right. And I said at the beginning with the startups, like we realized you needed like 27 of them to cover the costs of the 26 failures with the one that you're actually like doubling down on. Right. And so once we realized those two models, we thought, why can't we be a really good product shop that repeatedly builds products over and over and over again and becomes exceptionally good at business models, understanding where startups can succeed and where startups can accelerate their growth based on the model that we come up with. So not only are we an agency, we're also coming in there and suggesting, hey, we've built 50 products before. We kind of have an idea how the industry works. And we also kind of have an idea of how like this business model can be applied to your industry for some future success. And let's build that together. Let's become partners. And there's no handshake of like equity or anything like that. Sometimes they fall into place. Like my CTO becomes a fractional CTO. My team becomes like an embedded engineering team. But that path allows us to get capital, to get cash up front from the customer to say, let's go build this. And as we build together, we start realizing that, this product is successful, but we're chasing profitability dreams. We're not chasing growth at all costs. So that's the model that we've fallen into. I call it a bootstrap venture studio, but in reality, it's the mix between a business model and being an agency.
What can you be? You can be anything, but then you end up zeroing in your career and in your life into something. And oftentimes it's not what you expected or it's not what you thought you would do. But perhaps we end up in these places because we're good at them or there's some other force or people can just sort of recognize, hey, you're the guy for this. Yeah. And you seem the most credible in this world, even if that's not necessarily what you saw yourself as. Do you think that that's accurate?
As a young individual, you need to have that ridiculously unachievable goal that you go towards. And then eventually you'll fall into this place where you're like, you know what? I'm happy. But you have to get past the point of being happy so that you can fall back into it. And I realized that in the last 2 years that, you know what, we're good where we are. I don't need to keep pushing the team and my team members like I did in 2016 and 2017. We're actually doing well. And that took a huge turn. It took coaching, it took therapy, it took, a lot of conversations with my wife of trying to figure out how to go backwards from the mindset of like hustle only into like, hey, you know what? We actually made it. Like we don't need to be that ridiculous.
My life is pretty good right now. We're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also funny that you reprioritize it because I have a young daughter. I talk about this a lot, but your life, it's hard to let go of things that you did prioritize, especially when you're younger as you transition. This is something that I struggle with a lot because, of course, I came from a background in entertainment and music, which was very cool. My Instagram looked a lot better. I was at a lot of parties. I was DJing and doing all this stuff. I wasn't making even a fraction of as much money as I'm making now, but my life sure looked a lot cooler on the outside. And of course, I know people from that world who are successful in that, in my previous dream. And if I look at their Instagram, a part of me always suffers a little bit because I say, oh my God, they're still out there partying and they're in Ibiza and they're traveling in that world. And then I'm here stuck in my little cube. It's a very nice cube. I've also been remote for many years. And it's just a lot less sexy. And even doing this, like a lot less sexy to talk about this versus, Kim Kardashian's makeup style. But it's more profitable, like you said. And it's still hard for me sometimes, I must admit, just to be very honest, to let go of the old dream, even though I know the reasons why I'm in this new thing. And like you said, being there for your kids, I remind myself sometimes, if I was a touring DJ, if all of that went well and I was a musician, I wouldn't see my kids. I would be on an airplane all the time. But now, because I've worked very hard to build this life where I get to be here, I also get to watch my daughter grow up. I also get to do things with her. So it's just like, I know why I'm here and I know why I made the choices that I made, but it's still sometimes hard to let go of those other things. Do you have any thoughts on that process?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, that's the transition I've gone through is because society idolizes those Instagram positioning jobs, whether it's a DJ, a musician, an athlete, a social media star, whatever you want to call
Right.
that persona that's very easy to talk about. I mean, parents and friends and relatives, they can promote those individuals very easily and say, hey, look at my son, look at my friend who is meeting Shaquille O'Neal this week and then is talking to DJ Khaled or whoever's famous in the DJ. But
Sure.
it's very easy for society to elevate and repeat that those are the successful individuals. And, you sit in an office just like I do, and it becomes lonely and it becomes like I'm not getting out into the world, but I'm doing pretty good, but there's no social recognition around that. There's
Right.
no parents or friends or relatives that are saying
Nobody's cheering you on.
nobody's cheering you on.
You're
Nobody's
awesome,
following
buddy.
you on your accounts. Yeah, like you just have to tell yourself like I made it, but there's literally no feedback loop. And that is one of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur. I've been lucky to go to conferences, these private conferences with other entrepreneurs who have made it. And all we talk about is loneliness and unrecognized. And these people, they're doing way better things than I am. And they're famous on social media. And they're still talking about how frustrating it is for their parents to recognize them, for their relatives to even, bestseller book authors aren't even getting calls from friends and relatives. And, it's one of those things that we deal with as entrepreneurs.
What advice do you have then to level up and to learn? I mean, obviously books, of course, are plentiful, but what else has been particularly useful for you?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest things for my life has been, I got a business coach right at the beginning of 2020, and it had nothing to do with COVID. It was more just, I needed to be a better person. I needed to figure out who and what I wanted as an individual because I was pushing my team in a path that wasn't actually proven. I was pushing them down the startup mode. I was trying to get them to build products that didn't have a path in the future. And so I needed first to balance what my sanity was. And so that is the first advice I'd give any entrepreneur. Once you hit the $1 to $2 million range and you have a legitimate team, figure yourself out so that people want to be around you and people want to go to the next level with you. So that's the first piece of advice. And then the second one I would say is just culture, really focus on culture of the team. I was just listening to a podcast from the founder of Priceline. He's out here in Boston. And he had suggested that his order of operations is culture, team, culture, profits. And it's a really true piece of advice is that if you focus on the right team and you have the right mindset of people really like working together, the profits will kind of come. But the second, after you figure yourself out, you really have to figure out what people want to work for. Why do they want to be in your company? Because it stinks to hire every month. And we are so privileged this year. We have 100% retention. We haven't lost a single individual to, leaving for a different job or, needing to fire them because we're downgrading. We have grown as a company. And I think culture is a huge part of that. We were able to support the team through the war, but we were also able to support all the other individuals around the world that were dealing with us while dealing with the war. And I think that goes to show that our culture really has been solidified at this point. And now it's a matter of continuing that aspect of teamwork, culture work, and then the profits will just come.
That's some fabulous insight. I know we got cut a little bit short here. We're kind of going over our time because we had some technical difficulties in the beginning, but this right here is me doing that. You're farther than me, so this is me trying to learn from you, and you've shared a lot of very valuable insights and wisdom here. I'm definitely going to think about a business coach. I think the reason that I haven't done it is there's just so many scammers out there. Everybody brands themselves as a business coach, right? Everybody on Instagram is a business coach, an entrepreneur coach, and just buy their course for $5,000 and you're solved, right? Yeah. It's just been very tough to find. I see it as like a marriage or a relationship.
It is.
I like the idea in theory, but they better be good. They better be worth it.
You know
how do you find one that's good? Yeah, that's my last question.
People, I'm so happy with mine, and I think the majority of people are in your shoes. They don't see the correct connection. But what I did, I think, is the same way I find my employees, especially the ones that directly work for me. I see a need in my life, or I see a need of what I'm gapped. And when I heard my business coach talk on a podcast, I said, that's what I want to be. That's the person I want to be. That's the type of mindset I want to be. And he wasn't a business coach at the time. And I said, I will train under you. I am interested to learn from you. Like, what does it take? And it just so happened that he had also been considering to start this for 20 individuals. And so I got lucky in that sense. But I think like chasing the employees that you really want to work with, the apprentices that the bosses that you want to be an apprentice for, chasing the business coaches that you want to work for, that want to work for you. I think that's the important aspect of it, because if they come to you, it never really works out. You need to find what you need for your path forward.
Right. That's very wise words. Well, I very much appreciate you taking the time. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you. I'm excited for what comes next. You've achieved some pretty big things, and I know you're either going to keep going or you're going to stay right here and be happy with it. I guess that's really up to you, but
growth is always on the future, so we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure you will, just based on who you are, but it's been a pleasure talking to you. Before we wrap it up, I'd like to leave the last word to you. So however you want to close this out, promote anything you want to promote, or say whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I'll just continue on the topic that we're basically saying is, if you're really struggling with trying to figure out like what your next steps are, really focus on yourself. Read the books that are not necessarily self-help books, but read the founder books, the Rand Fishkin books, Shoe Dogs, those books that show how an entrepreneur went from step 1 to step 1,000 or whatever step they're on now. And you'll realize that they took a lot of swings. They took a lot of at-bats. The Beatles played in, Copenhagen for, 8 years, something like that, repetitively together, like 10 hours a night. No one talks about that. They just talk about the Beatles on stage for the 1960s. But you'll find that any autobiography around a founder that's building a company comes with years and years of just getting up at the plate, missing, and then getting up to the plate again and again and again. And I think that's the advice that we've kind of dug into on this podcast of, you're not going to find it on the first try, but you're also not going to find it just because you're following the people that have. You need to actually take the attempts yourself. And I think that's an important lesson that I've learned the hard way. And I think everyone has learned the hard way that's kind of made it, but like also is trying to give advice as well.
Well, that's fabulous advice across the board. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, Andrew. And with that, the official podcast is over.